Our hotel has a total of 250 guest rooms with a mix of 50 premium and 200 standard rooms. We have not done any refurbishments since the opening, as the plan was postponed due to the softening economy and subsequent lack of. The hotel is practicing a positioning strategy of high price and high quality. For our pricing strategy, we practice a value-based pricing strategy based on our hotel quality and service levels, as well as competitive pricing strategy as we aim to match our competitors, which explains the price adjustments throughout the year.
For the market segments, we looked at the booklet, and according to the booklet, in Q1, new conventions and businesses opened. Therefore, we decided to mainly target tours, guaranteed and small groups for discounted, for weekend and weekdays. And for transients, we targeted bar standard on weekends and weekdays.
Throughout the year, La Maison has kept their ARI above the competition at 1.05 on average, which indicates a higher price compared to our competitors. The only time we were below was in May when we set too low of a RFP price and it went down to 0.82 index. The occupancy percentage rate was fluctuating during the whole year, and our MPI is mostly slightly below 100%, which means that we were underperforming than our comp set. The loss in occupancy was fully compensated by our high ADR, which generated still a positive RevPAR. For our hotel, we have a market share which has a slight fluctuation of 10%. The gross operating profit percentage for La Maison is steady at around 30 to 40%, with an increase in the total revenue from January to August. However, the expectation of more than 40.5% in the GOP was not reached in our goal.
Based on a property background information booklet, the commission costs for the distribution channels were as the following. Our goal was to push the direct, OTA, and GDS in order to maximize revenue. Throughout the quarters, we continued to put a heavy weight on the direct channels for our transient bar standard segment, as we aim to attract more customers through direct booking. For the rest of the target segments, we maintained a heavier weight with direct channels as well, while maintaining a fairly balanced, equal weight for both GDS and OTA. In regards to our trigger points, we mainly practiced rate reduction. We more or less kept the same trigger point percentage ratios for our channels. There were some fluctuations with demand when we accepted an RFP in Q2.
Being that the funds needed for advertisement come from the monthly revenue, its financing is based on our performance. However, a mistake was made in the allocation of our funds. We were aiming to use a strong marketing strategy by aiming 6% of revenue to marketing, but due to our error, we applied 10% monthly. This being, even with our excessive spending, we found that it was hard to maintain an adequate market momentum in certain distribution channels because we chose to allocate marketing funds to all segments and channels instead of truly targeting our main and focal segments. Once the skeleton for our marketing efforts was set, we decided to control it using the following criteria. First, the target segment, the market indexes and momentum, and whether it was a weekday or a weekend. We were aiming to use an aggressive marketing tactic in order to captivate as much of the market as possible and gain close to 10% market share in our unselected segments and more than 10% market share in our main targets. This measure was essential to decide how to allocate correctly through the right channels.
With the current positioning and pricing strategy of our hotel, we decided to add guest room internet, foreign exchange, and transport van service for January. For March, we added services for express check-in and out, and music and entertainment, as we are having a higher market share of premium guests. We think this would add value to the guest experience. For April, we have a sufficient amount of funds for service. We decided to add a concierge service, which could help to reach our hotel's positioning. We waited until July to add our last service on the list, which is a turn-down service that cost only $2,000 for the capital investment, when we have enough funds in the previous months already. If we could have done this before the peak months, I believe that we could have a better performance.
Major refurbishments were done to satisfy our customer segments. Therefore, the lobby, front desk, and meeting rooms were refurbished, and by the end of the quarter, we had high satisfaction rates that went up to 85% on reputation management. Towards the end of the quarter, once high season was done, quality went down. Therefore, we decided to retouch on our refurbishments to improve the satisfaction rates.
For facilities in Q1, we only started investing in March, and we invested in travel and tour desk as we have enough funds and because we are targeting tours, guaranteed, and small groups. For quarter 2, we spent our funds on valet parking as we had double the funds we had in quarter 1. In the middle of quarter 3, we had an increase in revenue, therefore our funds increased as well. We spent the funds on an executive lunch. Although the lunch does not bring direct revenue, we thought that it would bring guest satisfaction. We still had no change in facilities in quarter 4.
During quarter 1, we were in a low demand season with expected occupancy of 46.5. Our performance was fluctuating during the first quarter with the steady increase in the RevPAR, but decrease in RGI in February. ADR continues to increase following the market with the indication of the ADR index. For our room forecast, quarter 1 was a moment to figure out our prices for each of our segments. Moreover, we always checked our direct competitors' prices such as the RevNet and the Hotel 12.1. What we noticed by the end of the quarter is that all our market penetration index decreased, meaning that our hotel was not competitive enough.
During quarter 1, our trigger points were not effective as our occupancy rate was relatively low compared to the other quarters. Lowering our rate reduction point could have been effective towards boosting our occupancy rate. This was a mistake that we should have taken into consideration beforehand. In anticipation of higher demands in quarter 2, we have increased our rate reduction point by 10% in the last month of quarter 1.
We decided to offer a high price of $140 that would be very profitable if taken, even though our goal was not necessarily to obtain this RFP. We wanted to focus on aligning our strategy and attracting our main client groups.
In the beginning of the year, we found that our position on the price value map was one of the lowest compared to our competition. And over the course of the first 3 months, we moved towards one of the higher tiers in the competition.
As the market demand was expected to increase from quarter 2, we maintained our prices from quarter 1 and decided to make changes in the middle of quarter 2 based on our competitors' pricing. However, we got the RFP for the month of May, which changed our initial plans for this quarter. We experienced a boost in occupancy rate. However, due to our low MAR provided for the group, it affected our ADR and RevPAR negatively, which drastically decreased our ADR index.
For quarter 2, we choose to decrease our rates in order to match our competitors. Also, it is a tactic to increase our occupancy. We accepted the RFP, which is demonstrated by the sudden increase in our market penetration index for groups. This resulted in a sacrifice in revenue from our transient and also from a discounted segment.
Our rate reduction point was effective during the initial month of quarter 2. During May, we accepted an RFP, therefore we expected a higher occupancy rate. However, our rate increase trigger point was too high to be effective. We should have lowered it by 10% to compensate and maximize for the revenue loss.
This time we decided to get the group request as much as possible as our occupancy had not been good in the beginning of Q2. We were able to provide a very low rate of $99 because our displaced contribution was also low. We were able to get this group, however, we realized that our bid was a little low to be realistic. We shouldn't have tried to offer such a low price as we could have been more profitable by accepting the normal transient guests. Demand in Q2 is considerably higher and we assume that revenue would increase for most hotels and therefore they would increase their marketing efforts too. Despite the prediction and this increase by 2,000 in weekend and weekdays direct transient fund, we lost in the marketing index on that side. By the end of Q2, we found it hard to maintain market indexes high in our funded marketing channels.
In the second quarter, we had a major fall in prices due to our RFP. And as you can see on the graph, we ended up being the lowest in prices in comparison to our competition.
This quarter, we were still in high season, so we attempted a rate increase for all our segments in order to generate and maximize revenue during our last high season quarter. Our increase in price was effective from July to August as we experienced a better rate efficiency percentage and increase in occupancy rate as well as RevPAR. Even though the occupancy rate of our hotel didn't increase, the occupancy index increased from 0.91 to 0.93, showing that the decrease of occupancy is due to the market condition.
In quarter 3, we entered high season and due to the high demand, we increased our rate by $10 for our main segment and by $5 for our other segments. Then we realized that it wasn't a good idea, so the month after, we put the rate as it was before in June.
Our rate reduction and rate increase trigger points were ineffective during quarter 3. We set our rate reduction point at 65%, consistent to the previous quarter, because we wanted to maintain our occupancy rate above this point as we were still in high season. And if our occupancy rate fell below, we then planned to sacrifice our ADR to keep up our occupancy rate.
As the high season was in progress, we decided that it was not profitable to displace the amount of transients. We decided to submit a high price of $129 that would most likely not be given the RFP. Q3, as we found many issues trying to become lead in transient market index, we decided to focus our marketing efforts to our market segments that was working best, discounted and group. We comparatively spent more funds towards these branches and were rather successful as we managed to get and maintain market index in the top 3 hotels. As our revenue grew during Q3, we decided our extra funds should be directed towards regaining a strong position in the direct transient segment. This was most likely not a good idea as we had become part of the leaders for discounted and group segments. We should have stayed focused on attracting more of these segments while remaining in the competition for transients.
In the third quarter, we managed to recover and raise our ADR, so we moved back to our positioning with high prices. We realized, however, that our quality was not up to par, so we invested in refurbishing our facilities and moved the quality upwards.
We started this quarter with lower price and lower quality indicated by the price value map. However, we were finally able to position ourselves in the high price, high quality quadrant due to our refurbishments that have been in process. During our last quarter, we experienced a stable ADR but decreasing occupancy rate and RevPAR, which could have resulted from our cut in marketing expenses. This is also supported by our market index decreasing, which explains that we are not doing well compared to the market.
For the last quarter, there is no change in our rates. Instead, we adjusted the trigger points. Furthermore, we did not achieve our goal because our quality did not match our prices. In order to regain an adequate position, we brought the prices down to make revenue and have enough money to make further refurbishments to the end of the session.
None of our trigger points were effective in our last quarter. We did indeed lower our rate reduction point in anticipation of a lower occupancy rate as we were approaching lower season. However, as our actual occupancy rate was higher than expected, the trigger point did not make any difference. This quarter, we decreased our rate increase point back by 10% as we realized that our occupancy rate will not go above 85%, which was set during the last month of quarter 3.
Not enthusiastic about displacing our bar transient, we therefore practiced a relatively high price that we knew most likely would not be given the group, $110. As our hotel was not performing very competitively in terms of occupancy and RGI, the adequate level investment was not enough to be competitive. We lowered our total investments towards marketing to $50,700, and our market indexes have also decreased, making our efforts rather unfruitful.
Finally, by the end of the year, all refurbishments were made and we achieved our goal to reach high quality and high prices.
For the short term, first one would be before accepting the RFP, we should have considered that an increase in occupancy rate doesn't necessarily mean that the revenue will be maximized. Therefore, we should have come up with a higher MIR to not jeopardize our revenue. Second recommendation, throughout the simulation, we should have anticipated our room rates better according to the predicted occupancy. Third recommendation, for quarter 2, 3, and 4, we should have set more precise and measurable objectives knowing the actual market. We should have also based our decision not so much on the price value map, as it is a general overview of competition levels. However, it doesn't provide much detail to the competitors' strategies.
For our long-term, we recommend La Maison Hotel to keep 6% marketing investment so that we don't spend excess money for ineffective marketing. Another recommendation is that we should have focused more on refurbishing rooms and facilities and services to match our initial positioning. Had we done this, we may have been able to maintain our high price, high value strategy more effectively throughout each quarter and expected greater revenues as well. But we should have clearly stated our global strategy from the beginning of the year, which was an unclear step that the management of La Maison missed out on.